Of course, it pretty much goes without saying, wait until my big, juicy, full review of the game for me to really completely rip it apart, as well as the original. You'll want to peep that and the next Paper Mario series and development retrospective I'm gonna do. Pretty much sequel to why Paper Mario changed and refuses to change. But for now, my first impressions when it comes to the game so far. I beat the first 2 chapters on 2 different streams. We'll stream the game again over the coming days, probably tonight, assuming this goes up in the afternoon. But chapters 1 and 2, several troubles, some casino games, and a little bit extra. And yeah, let's talk Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, and how this remake stacks up so far. Of course, remaking Thousand Year Door all on its own, it's really hard to screw up Thousand Year Door. Even if, say, like a good chunk of the NPCs, they had basic vanilla designs, like in Sticker Star and Color Splash, they were redesigned to be more vanilla. It'd be a tough pill to swallow, but if the major key unique characters remain, it'd still be a good game at the end of it, and that's not even mentioning the combat itself. But as is, just putting aside, this is still a real thing that released a couple days ago. A real game that wasn't just plucked out of 800 different Nintendo Direct predictions for more than 10 years now. This remake pretty much is, to me anyways, perfect. I know perfect is an exaggeration, especially when I do have a few teeny tiny little quarrels with this remake, but on the whole, it does way more positives than negative. It pretty much is a vastly improved version of The Thousand Year Door. And even that undersells it. This remake is genuinely breathtaking. It's a truly marvelous experience. And the immediate thing is both the visuals and how the game runs. And it's like the visuals are as beautiful and elegant as I could have possibly ever wanted. The lighting goes absolutely Insano style. I didn't even know Mars Animation Planet was the one behind it. They're the goats. Sonic fans, you already know. But the texturing, the shading, it's magnificent. I'm pretty convinced this is the best looking Paper Mario game. The texture work, the lighting, and reflections go just that crazy. The way the Thousand Year Door's altar glows, Petal Meadows' lighting, the underground lighting peaks and reflections for Rogueport Underground and Shewonk Fortress. It's exactly the kind of graphic overhaul I would ever want from Thousand Year Door. Coupled with some areas and cutscenes given more dynamic camera angles as well, Thousand Year Door in general now is more cinematic than the original, and that's awesome. It's a drop-dead gorgeous game, going all out on presentation and style, and I'm glad it's given that sheen and polish on the visuals all on its own. I will say though, there was this whole debate sparked with the fact that this game runs at 30 frames as opposed to the original 60 frames, and that was before the game's resolution output was proven to be at 900p, not even 1080p. Unless I'm mistaken, it's pretty much how Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is outputted. And primarily from the lighting and the textures, maybe even a couple moments where there's hordes of fuzzies in Shewonk Fortress. Shwonk Fortress, whatever. Or the Dull Bones in Hooktail Castle, but it feels evident where sacrifices were made for this game. And it's a short adjustment to get used to the 30 frames in like the first 5-15 minutes of the game. But I pretty much forgot entirely the game was running at 30 pretty much immediately after, because for a 30 frames per second game, the characters' animations are smooth as butter. I really do wish it does hit that 1080p 60 FPS mark, hoping it does get those buffs next console as it's rumored and likely leaked, to make it truly perfect visually. All that said, I'm content with the sacrifice. No, the game isn't outputted or running at the highest frame rate or resolution, but given how much harder the overall visual style the game is going for is, and this is a Switch title, I understand why it was done this way, just like Origami King. But I don't mind it too much because the game runs consistently at 30 frames. At some points, like the puzzle to get to the pipe to Hooktail Castle, I could swear I remember that part lagging way more in the original, and there might be more instances where it either does tank at very small points, or run smoother in areas the original couldn't. And even with the consistent 30 FPS, I'm fine with it because of the textures, shading, lighting, and all that. I mean, that's why the game runs that way, but it still makes the game look so evocative. It's super colorful, it's vivid, it's lifelike, it's just such a beautiful game. Even with the lower resolution and frames, I never would have expected just that lighting and the reflections to make a game like Thousand Year Door feel even more alive and just pop out even more than its pop-up book style does. It's an unfortunate compromise, but I am just wowed at how big of a glow-up this remake is. I just hope we get either patch notes to this system, or this game really does get that resolution and frame buff the next console. People saw some code for this remake, and it doesn't match the name for the Switch, so people theorize and believe. I'm starting to believe that code is for the Switch 2, and Switch 2's backwards compatibility does equal Switch era game frame rate and resolution buffs, which would be fantastic, But yeah, the presentation's nothing short of phenomenal. I'm super looking forward to chapters 4, 6, and 7 and 8 visually. Those are going to be insanely good. I just know they're going to be bangers, just graphically. But on top of how immensely faithful this game is, from every single character design from the original remaining intact right down to the locations and level design, the other wild thing to me is that Thousand Year Door is a game that already boasts some of the most personality and charm out of any Mario game, straight up. All the original and unique characters, all of their own personalities, designs, roles, the partners, the bosses and main enemies, the locations, how out there and weird they are for a Mario game, the story. Like, Thousand Year Door is the trademark personality-ridden Paper Mario game for a good reason. But I never anticipated the developers to not double, not triple, quintuple that charm and personality. And they did it not just by adding one or two, but several reactions and emotions to every single NPC. Every single character in Thousand Year Door now emotes and reacts exponentially more. Way more than they did in the original, and it is so damn cute. Goombella has like 5 new reactions and facial expressions. The mouse and dog people throughout, I forget their names. Even the Paper Curse Demon, literally every single person gives a visible reaction to what the characters are saying and actions happening on screen. Whether dialogue, in-game story, or just smacking them with their hammer. I don't even know if it's that noticeable unless you play the original, and this could always be because I played the original so many times. I know how these characters react and move, and most characters already had some reactions in the original, and more than just one expression during certain events. But Paper Mario in general just has these very simplistic character designs they make as sprites, so it's nothing super complicated or deep, but there are totally way more than in the original, and it is just so subtle, but something veterans can spot so easily, and it is just that pleasant to see. It's just simple yet effective. None of them are over the top or clash with the simplistic nature of Paper Mario's design. It does absolutely nothing, no compromises, sacrifices, or losses, but enhance the intent and character of the overall world and its people. And that genuinely is a spectacular thing that goes a long way in building that attachment for the player to the game and its world. It's just that little thing that adds exceptionally more character to the game and more depth to the characters themselves. That also adds to pretty much how the characters move idly, how hair, clothing, and whatnot, they're all moving independently. This layered Photoshop aesthetic or layered pop-up book style that lends so well to the original's art style and still shows for more paper-like detail and fine-tuning like the modern games without going super overboard. But the layered style specifically is just another piece of this subtle aura to the presentation. Independent limbs and parts instead of just one sole entity, one singular sprite with 2 frames of movement like the last 3 games. It's another subtle thing that just adds depth to this game. There's a few major things in this remake that do improve the experience, but a lot of it is just really small quality of life stuff. Really teeny tiny subtle things that a lot of players might not even pick up on. Just these little changes and add-ons that compromise nothing and just do these little simple things to make this amazing game even more amazing. It's something that can't even be understated either. And the devs bothered to give every character voice blips, audible sounds when giving dialogue, a lot like Banjo-Kazooie or the modern Mario and Luigi titles. It is just that much more charming. All the while, every character is recreated ridiculously faithfully to the original. It's so faithful, so true to the original, and yet enhances it so easily with so many of these new animations and new voice clips. It's something no Paper Mario really went the extra mile to fully flesh out and expand upon, even in the Origami King. So it's extra appreciated the developers pretty much added that extra layer of depth and charisma to every single character. Thousand Year Door literally got given at least twice as more creativity and emotion. There's so much more life now, it's astounding. It's something even non-veterans to Thousand Year Door can appreciate immensely just playing this game. And we hardly even got such a microscopic little taste at this little subtle elegance during the trailers and promotional material. It just does bring around home how great this game looks. It truly feels like the next step for a modern Paper Mario game. They genuinely tried as hard as they can to make this game look and feel like a modern Paper Mario game, and it really shows. It does pay off and pulls it off even better than the modern games because of so many of these little subtle changes to character sound design, the potpourri of animations, extra expressions, little idle animations, the texture, shading, lighting. It just all looks so unbelievably amazing. They managed to make this older Paper Mario look and feel insanely modern. They completely cooked with so well with the visuals. I know I've been harping a lot on just the presentation alone so far, but it really is just such a well-balanced fusion and is significantly enhanced from the original in so many elusive, precise tweaks. It really is the perfect balance of the older pop-up style with the modern horsepower and insane level of detail and shine. It is a really perfect blend. Second genuine upgrade is also the fast travel in this remake, because no matter anyone's opinions on Thousand Year Door, there's always people that bring up the one thing that's always a lambasted gotcha whenever anyone praises everything else about the game. Actually, the backtracking isn't that good, even though, at least in my opinion, it's a mild annoyance when you understand where to go. Stuff like chapters 4 and 7 are for sure standouts in a not so good way, despite how good at least chapter 4 is. So it was a primary blemish on an otherwise remarkable video game. And now, it's pretty much gone. Where it matters, at least, that one sole critique, that one problem for some with Thousand Year Door, basically got exterminated, if not at worst, significantly easier to stomach. The pipe room under Rogueport Square is completely different. Instead of pipes to the places in chapters 1, 2, 5, and 6 only, now there are 8 pipes leading straight to the main locations of every chapter, and a separate pipe leading to Rogueport Square. Already, Chapter 7 significantly gets easier to bear with and isn't just as long as the original because it's way more streamlined and less disjointed just traveling. But just going off word of mouth too, I hear that's not all the buffs to the fast travel there are too. I hear chapters 4 and 5 basically got better too. I'm going ahead and just gonna assume it's true. I could be wrong, didn't get that far yet, but I can always correct myself when I do and when I get to my review later on. So assuming if true, plus the puny AI in chapter 2 is improved as well. Another thing I personally wanted, even if they barely did improve it, basically every major point that most people had when it came to piss poor backtracking is pretty much gone. And that is fantastic. That alone pretty much already makes this remake better than the original than just the visuals alone. It basically leaves the main experience with no major gripes as far as the main campaign, the part that pretty much everyone is going to be playing for. And that is one of the main things I personally was asking for, so I'm glad. The backtracking these days doesn't bother me that much, if at all, anymore, even in chapter 7, but I know there are people that just loathe getting to those parts, so making them not as annoying and frustrating to deal with is good for essentially everyone all around. You also have more visual cues for where to go, like Professor Frankly's house having a sign. You can also now hold up to 15 items instead of 10, which does indeed make the game easier, but I completely appreciate it, and I can bet a lot of other people will like the idea of having more storage space. You can also immediately use an item if your bag is too full. Instead of just immediately dropping an item, you can make use of it so it doesn't go to waste, which is another efficient and convenient conservative change. The new Battletoad and Trouble Center Mouse, Ian Flumis, the former letting you practice action commands and guarding, and the latter allowing you to have hints and advice on clearing troubles. I'm already good at Thousand Year Door when it comes to guarding and super guards, even in the remake, but believe it or not, despite the simplifier badge making action commands easier, there are people that kinda struggle with action commands even beyond super guarding. So it is nice just seeing this game go the extra mile and giving lesser skilled players a better chance and space to learn. With that, there's an extra tutorial in Petal Meadows that pretty much lets you know about the audience mechanic and the shy guy that runs up on stage and drops things in battle. Again, just the game actually trying and explaining to you how everything around the battle system works. Otherwise, that battle system is just as fun, engaging, and addictive as the original. You got the bingo rolls, stylish moves, the audience members tossing stuff, it's all there and it's all great. I will say also people were nervous the frame rate drop was going to be a bit of a hassle, particularly because of timing action commands in battle, but I will say enemy attacks and animations are largely not exactly the same as the original. That was to be expected given the remake was built from the ground up in Origami King's engine, but I do gotta say, I didn't really struggle at all trying to super guard until I equipped Unsimplifier, but it's Unsimplifier. I went straight for Gus like any Thousand Year Door veteran with a pair of nuts, and almost every single attack he whipped out at me, I parried just fine. Again, it could also factor from the different timing, speed, animation of enemies' attacks, but Gus gives you trouble fighting him mad early in the original, yet this version was low-key kind of a cakewalk. So yeah, it didn't take long for me to adjust to the combat frame rate. I think it's 2 frames out of 30, instead of 3 out of 60, maybe it's 3 out of 30. So technically that would mean it got bumped up to 4 frames a second by 60 in real time for the player. But yeah, no, I could still pull off regular guards and super guards just fine. It's only when Unsimplifier is equipped, and even then it's not that impossible. But if a Battlemaster Toad is introduced to help practice fighting, I'd imagine this is something they probably accounted for mid-development. Another thing too, audience members throwing items and hazards at you, they made that significantly easier too. This change, I think, depends on who you are. For people like me, I'm not rolling in my grave. I'm just like 0.00001% a bit let down because of how much simpler snuffing out items or hazards from the audience is. Like, I like the aspect of you having to pay attention to the audience beneath you, pretty much everything on screen, not just what's on stage, especially if you get a helpful item. It made me more aware of the situation, and it was based on reaction, and it felt rewarding because of that. But others aren't a fan of the BS they'll toss to you. Sometimes people miss it by accident too, so it's a double-edged sword depending on who you ask. Me though, it just makes that specific mechanic easier to react to as the game lets you fully know on purpose who's throwing what. So battling in general is just as fun as the original game, and of course the Nostalgic Tunes badge, letting you swap between the new remade soundtrack. I forgot the soundtrack. Oh my, wait, hang on. Okay, but you could choose between the new and older soundtrack with that badge, another thing I wanted, and even toggle the original OST with some of the newer songs put for character themes and certain cutscenes and other stuff, which is, of course, very lovely. But I was not aware how the soundtrack for Thousand Year Door is a little bit more divisive than I thought, and at least it's just the soundtrack. Of course, I see people adore it, but plenty mark it as the worst Paper Mario score, marking how repetitive it is for some songs, which that I could totally understand. Event Battle, Bigger Baddie, Bigger Fight, the main battle theme, Rogueport Underground City, and other songs aren't long loop-wise. They're like a minute or less, usually less. That said, I love Thousand Year Door soundtrack. It has some genuine bangers with Rock Hawk Rock, Shadow Siren Scuffle, and just pure vibes with Excess Express at Dusk, Bogley Woods, Riverside Station, and even more great scores. This remake remixes these songs largely what feels like in a live band, theatrical type of way, like I'm watching a theater. At least that's what it sounds like from some of the songs. But not only are these remixes either good, just as good, or better than the original, it kind of goes all over the place in those categories for me, but Event Battle, Peaceful Petalburg, and Rogueport Sewers, those three so far are some of my favorite jams. So far, I'm not gonna lie, I think I prefer the original as a whole in terms of the music so far, but you know I'm gonna be replaying this game a lot. I 100%ed Mario Odyssey at least 7 times since I got it, all 880 moons, put 300 plus hours in that game so far. Luigi's Balloon World runs went crazy. So you know this remake is something I'm gonna be playing very often, just like Odyssey. But not only that, we have character themes, Goombella, Koops, the other partners have character themes. There's more new music and more cutscenes. Every major area has a unique battle theme corresponding to that area, including thinking variants, both just like Origami King. And every song from the original game remixed basically has an extended version, a new, longer version like Super Mario RPG soundtrack. Like, they went 5 times harder on the animations and expressions for characters. They did the exact same thing with the soundtrack too. And they really didn't have to do that, because it was already a good score. And these remixes are already just so good. So extending the familiar ones and adding a bunch of new ones, as a guy who loves video game music, it is really incredibly appreciated. Thank you so much for this. For the pipe travel buffs, and just having this remake exist, Nintendo. This I wanted for so long. All of that. The map gives you percentages for whether you found all the star pieces and shine sprites in certain areas. If there's none, they have dashes. That's extremely welcome and a great incentive to go back and find them, especially since some ground panels in the original game you could not consistently find with your hammer, while in this remake it's wholly consistent. So going after those, and especially when doing so unlocks artwork and songs in an art and sound gallery, on top of the already pre-existing rewards of buffing your partners and buying badges, are both fantastic ways to encourage exploration. These make Thousand Year Doors' worlds and levels more fun to mess around with and scour, even for as linearly designed as it is. The partner ring's a more convenient thing, despite it's not really a lot of button presses saved, especially when hitting the left on the D-pad, just like in the original, lets you swap between partners anyway. But whatever, sure, it's good. Goombella giving advice after hitting ZL's knee for newcomers. There's a lot of new sound design and sound effects that are good. Almost done with the positives. The Pianta Parlor is way easier now. They swapped the 3 slots of Lucky 7s and other symbols in the original with Super Mario Bros. 3's horizontal slots. That has a much easier pattern to decipher than the originals too. It's like the top when you see star, then a period, and then like a star, star. And so I wait for that first star long period, and then wait till I hit the 3rd one, and then it's like a more even like star, star, star in the center, and then star, and then you see mushroom pattern, and then wait for it, see the mushroom again, then Don Pianta, and then the star. That's my strat for the star bingo slot machine. But it is just like easier slots, easier and better playing game, harder paper game, just a more fun Pianta Parlor. being able to hammer in all 8 directions instead of just left and right, very welcome, just like the modern games. And for scripted fights, boss fights, and clearing each fight in the Pit of 100 Trials, you'll get clear bonus coins. You're rewarded more coins on average in this game, and it does go back to the argument in making the game easier, but it's a more interesting design choice than anything tweaking Thousand Year Door's economy, because badges and a couple other items in this game are way more expensive in shops than in the original. So I'd personally say it's better because some items are really damn expensive. But listing off all these pluses, these great subtle changes only scratches the surface of the amazing experience Thousand Year Door offers. But as much as this remake does feel perfect, there are a few things that either caught me off guard and made me think, and pretty much just only one specific thing that actually did disappoint me, but that's also because it's the thing I wanted as well, as something that would have made this thing just significantly more worth going out of your way to do. But stuff that caught my eye that aren't really problems, just weird changes, things I'm noticing. Going down pipes in Mario has always been holding down on the control stick. Pretty much every Mario game with pipes does that. You hold right and left on pipes that go up, it's the same thing. So it's weird for me that we gotta hit A for pipes. We have to hit the A button for pipes. Like, it's not a legitimate problem. It's really not. Just weird. Similar with X and Y, those abilities, because the GameCube controller's button mapping was very unique for a standard controller. Y on top, X on the right. Now it's Y on the left and X on top. So my muscle memory's gaslighting me with those abilities. Button mapping, very possible for a patch. Could be cool if we had that here, but it's more so just accustoming to a different control scheme, and you get access to less moves if you connect a GameCube controller to this remake. And of course, there's been a lot of localization changes compared to the original, but several different conversations pretty much are significantly more aligned with the Japanese version of Thousand Year Door instead. The Goombas not catcalling Goombella and basically just wanting to cause a fight over turf is fine. I do prefer the original catcalling because it sells the grungy, disgusting atmosphere of what Rogueport was meant to be, especially the underground city where it's filled with nothing but criminals. It was from sleazy enemies the player and the main characters already antagonized off the bat, even after meeting Goombella and Frankly, and it was them giving the Goombas their just desserts in doing so. But lines like that and several others, I'm definitely going to be preferring the original over this remake. There are multiple instances where they do add or just swap some original dialogue for something completely different, give off a different message and meaning, and it's all fine, pretty much. I think extremely few are flat out changes from both the original and the Japanese version, but the vast majority of Thousand Year Door's writing is still pretty much intact for the most part. It's still very funny and witty like the original, a bunch of it's still the same. They felt they had to tone down some elements of the original's writing, and like, it's fine, it's whatever, especially when most of it isn't really that changed that much. It's similar to the audience mechanic being easier. I feel it's not the end of the world when the vast majority of main messages, themes, and intentions are still there in Thousand Year Door. And when this remake is significantly less censored and faithful to the original Japanese intention. I know there's a whole stink around Vivian being transgender now in localized versions, but seeing people make videos being very upset specifically just for that, I'm sorry dude, you're like 20 years too late when that was in the original Japanese version and stirred extremely less controversy over there, and it doesn't harm anyone when she's not even the first trans Mario or Nintendo character either. The writing in general is still the same, it's still good and funny. There's even a couple new localizations that are either harmless or add to some characters. And the second to last thing I was thinking about before this remake dropped was the general pacing of it all. I'm talking text blurbs passing, moving from one text box to the next, battling enemies, the speed of which you execute your attack, the enemy's attack, healing HP and FP in the overworld, through bingo, sweet treat, like any small transition or action where there's downtime in between. Stuff like that pretty much is a general flow and pacing to a game. And with Origami King and Color Splash, they were very slow with this. This I can accept as a little more nitpicky. It kind of isn't, but it kind of is. But it just made those games slower than they could have been. And that's essentially the same with this remake too. Not the biggest worry, but you can't skip dialogue boxes, forget you can't reread ones you pass like in the original game. It's a set speed until it ends for you to continue, unless it's a repeated conversation. And it has all the little transition and in-between speeds of both the original, but also the modern games, and it is kind of a drag. A little more nitpicky, don't get me wrong, but it did go faster in those games and harder in tandem with its problems. It also kind of applies to Mario's speed too. I like how much more flexible he can walk and hammer like in Origami King and Color Splash. It's smooth, but with him and the other pacing pieces, I just wish it was a little faster. I don't know how much people are going to notice or feel affected by this specific one. Some of the old and new players might not have even noticed, let alone care at all. I don't, but I do wish we could get the option to fast forward and skip dialogue boxes like in the original. Otherwise, the only like actual thing that made me go, are you kidding me? was the Trouble Center. Ian-Fumus makes troubles easier, which is good for those who need it. The Pipe Room significantly helps the backtracking to those areas. And there's already so many incentives to do these side quests and other side content now with the star pieces, the galleries and whatnot, especially now that most troubles net you more coins than in the original. So the overall experience with the Trouble Center is definitely better. And I get that it's optional. But damn it if it's not the most basic RPG thing to do in this day and age, to let you do more than one trouble at a time. Just like the original, you can only do one side quest at a time. And I get it. I get that Thousand Year Door players, most of them do not care about the Trouble Center. Most do 3 specific troubles for very specific rewards. But it's Thousand Year Door's side quest board. If you're gonna have a side quest board, there's no reason to make it so only one quest at a time can't be done. Side quests in RPGs and open world games, they are not restricted to one at a time. Bug Fables, Grand Theft Auto, you could do multiple side missions and quests in a bunch of games at once. And I genuinely did want Thousand Year Door to do the same. And the last thing I want to hear is that. It's like, oh, doing multiple side quests, multiple troubles at once. It's an unrealistic expectation. Do you know anything about unrealistic expectations? Especially when that's pretty much the standard for any of those types of games. Any RPG, any open world game. Especially with the other quality of life changes they made to this game. That's completely not unrealistic whatsoever. See, like, anything you get disappointed by. You say anything that disappoints you, it's like, oh, you say your expectations too high. It was unreasonable. It was unrealistic. Every time. No matter what. Nuance and the 3 brain cells are lost in some people, and it gets annoying. This specific thing, though, it's more annoying than anything. Obviously, it functions fine. It's better in general, but man, if you fix that, if you fix the backtracking everywhere else in the game, you add pipes for certain places and posts, so you don't need to trek all the way back, yet allowing Mario to stack side quests wasn't a thing. If there's any patch I want, it's that. I know I'm making it sound like it's a bigger problem than it actually is, and I know the Pipe Room going to every single chapter location helps 80 times more, easily. But that's basically the only piece of the backtracking noticeable in Thousand Year Door that could get on your nerves. And even then it is optional. Not the worst thing in the world, just annoying to not see it change. But if the worst I could say is the Trouble Center's designed exactly the same as the original, and the pacing's like 3% slower than the original, that easily means there's a lot of love and respect about this phenomenal remake. Literally phenomenal. This is one of those remakes that's just as good as the original game you remember, with pretty much no compromises, and does nothing but enhance the overall experience of Thousand Year Door with dozens of smaller upgrades and quality of life stuff. It's the game you remember, but better. Beyond a mild annoyance with the Trouble Center being the same, still better because of the Pipe Room, this remake of Thousand Year Door otherwise is pure genius and full of more life and love than in the original. Aside from smaller changes to the localization and whatnot, like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. With and beyond that, all the splendor and uniqueness of Thousand Year Door is all here. It is all there just as you remember it pretty much. It's just as funny and witty as the original. It's still very silly, very gaggy. There's way more animation on display. The visuals are fantastic. The design of the characters and levels is extremely faithful. All the little quality of life changes and additions and new stuff, besides the visuals, don't compromise much of anything that made Thousand Year Door Thousand Year Door. It's just as different, just as weird, bizarre, and uncanny, but just as brilliant, charming, creative, and well-designed as the original, if not more so for the latter, and I do genuinely mean that. It's all present again after 20 years. I'll keep streaming me playing the game. I'll go way harder in my full review of both the original and the remake. If you thought this was meaty for an impressions video, just you wait till I actually sit down and review in its entirety this magnificent game. But just in case you've never seen my videos before, PSA, Thousand Year Door is good. It's pretty good. It's okay. It's alright. It's fine. It's kind of okay. I mean, like, it's kind of I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm kidding. I'm falling in love with this game all over again. It's wonderful. It's a fantastic Mario game that I can never get enough of. But that's it for my first impressions of the game. Good game. Good game deserves bought. You buy good game. I would love to get your thoughts in the comments, especially from people playing it for the first time. I would just love to see comments in general about people talking about Paper Mario, but especially from you guys playing it for the first time, please tell me what you guys think about this game. Especially with people just talking about and celebrating one of my favorite games of all time. Let us know. Do you finally understand? Do you finally get it? If you're playing it for the first time, it's like, oh my god, I get it in just like the first chapter, before the first chapter, the prologue, or maybe the first 2. Maybe you'll get it eventually. I'm seeing people finally get why we were so obnoxious with just how good this game is. Let me know if you think it's good, way overhyped, if we were gassing this up way higher than it needed to be, or if it was all nothing but a load of bull, you think the game is bad, if it was not as good as you had hoped or heard. tell us down below. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay determined, and stay super.
哟，嘿，妹妹，嘿，我来呀！呜呼，够了，冒泡泡呀！拉面，嘿，来。